Hello, Frank Whitmer here from Broudy Precision, and today I talk about the TC300 Thermostat by Honeywell. Originally released as a fan coil unit thermostat, there's been a recent firmware update that will allow it to be much more than that. So I thought it'd be a good time to review the thermostat, the settings, and also doing the firmware upgrade. So let's get started. So I thought we'd start with the highlights of the TC300. It is a color capacitive touchscreen display, and I've done some other videos of the TR100. They're built on the same hardware and have the same look and feel. It has the LED ring indicator that shows the system status, so it would be orange if it's calling for heat and turn to blue if it's calling for cooling. And as you can see on the screenshot on there, it's blue, so it's calling for cooling. You have multiple applications you can choose from, and has flexible I/O as well. There is a silk bus port on the thermostat that allows you to add TR40s, TR50s, TR7400, or I should say C7400 enthalpy sensor for outsider temperature and discharge temperature. And there is one part number. It's the TC300B-G. You'll see the current model that's out is a low voltage 24 volts AC source, and it does allow BACnet and Modbus communications. You can see the valve controls can be on-off, floating, modulating, or control a 6-way valve. Fan can be 1, 2, or 3 speed or variable speed. So as you can see, there's quite a few variations to this thermostat. And you could have external sensors tied to it, as drain pan, pipe sensors, occupancy, airflow, remote space temperatures, which is part of why you have the silk bus to be able to add the TR40 sensors for that. Discharge air, and again, the silk sensors, which we were just talking about. And there's some other additional functionality, which auxiliary heat, peripheral heat, dehumidification and humidification, and discharge air control. So first thing we'll cover is the communications. And as I mentioned, it does have a RS-485 port on there, so we can talk BACnet MSTP or BACnet or Modbus RTU. And the integration guides for MSTP and for Modbus are available, so the register addresses and all that are available for Modbus, and I have links at the end of this slide deck, which will get you to those documents. And I mentioned that there was a new firmware release, and originally this thermostat was a fan coil unit control for 2-pipe, 4-pipe systems, but when you upgrade this thermostat to version 1.1.0.0 firmware, you can also do it as 1 heat, 1 cool conventional air handler, 2 heat, 1 cool air source heat pump, a 2 heat, 1 cool water source heat pump as well. I mentioned firmware update. You do have to do the firmware update to be able to get these added features. And just so you know, it does take, the documentation says about 60 minutes. I've upgraded 2 of them, and it actually took 61 minutes on one and 62 minutes on the other. And there are 2 different ways to do that, and they're both through BACnet MSTP. One is with a application called YABE, yet another BACnet Explorer. There's a firmware file you can use with this to be able to do it, or if you're working with Niagara, you can use your Niagara software to be able to download the firmware. And again, it's going to take you a good hour to do that update. Quick look on the wiring, very similar to how it was set up for the TR100, but you have but in this case we have I/O on it. So you have UIO points, you've got the RS-485, you got your silk bus, you got your digital output, some DIO points, and your power as well. And the power terminals are designated up here in the upper right corner, exactly the same as the TR100. And let's see, then we go from there. I've got my resources, and for this presentation, and an easy place for you to go and grab to be able to see how you would configure the thermostat, how you would integrate to it with Modbus or BACnet. So we'll switch over to the actual thermostat, and with that, it's just the thermostat here. I'm just going to tap it, and you'll see you got a standard display on there, and if we just swipe, you have a much bigger selection of functions there. There's an information button in the corner to tell you what each of those icons are for. But what I wanted to do was go in here to configure, and we're just going to go through and do a reset, and we'll reset all. I want to go back to the original or the initial factory default to be able to show the how easy it is to set the thermostat up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I set up a real simple password there. So I'm going to say reset all, but you can see you can just reset the schedules or just restart the device. But we're going to tell it to reset all. We'll let it go through that. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be actually going in and using Workbench to show how to upgrade the firmware and also be able to integrate to it to be able to bring your points in. And what you'll find is there is a new palette in there, Honeywell TC Thermostat Wizard, and there's a TC300 there that you can choose and drop on the network. Once we get it running for back then MSTP, then we can match and go and do our firmware download at that point. And I just should mention I'm using 4.13.2. The reason I say that is because you'll see that it's Honeywell BACnet Device Manager rather than the separate TC Thermostat BACnet Device Manager of some earlier versions. Okay, so now we're back to the thermostat restarting after doing that reset, and it's in the startup wizard. So we are sitting there on Let's Begin, so we'll click Let's Begin. We start, we put in a device name. So we're going to go in there and we'll call it TC300. And check OK, so that's good. Configure your RS-45 connection. Yeah, we need to do that because we want to talk back that MSTP. So we can go in here, turn it on. I've got an address that I would like of 2015. And I want to go a manual MAC address. I want 15, say OK. Auto botting is fine, so we can get back out of here. Go on now. Temperature units, yeah, we want Fahrenheit and date and time. Well, that's already set for us. So let's see. We can go to equipment. We can set up equipment from here. You can do your I/O assignments as well. Your operation modes. And then we got to set up a password. So this time I'm going to use 112233. Check that. Move on. You can add name and phone number to this under the service section if you'd like. And then once we're done, it comes back and congratulates us. So if we want to go and do user management, we can do that from here. We're going to skip that. So we're back to the main display. Now we would go under control. We could go in there and change set points. We could go in there and get to schedules, and we can go under information if we wanted to do more, look more at the system settings. We go back over here. We have our fan control. We would just click there. You got your HVAC mode. You select what you want to do there, so you have all that functionality in place. But the main thing is we're set up for back then MSTP, so we want to be able to go in there and download the firmware. So with that, we'll go back to our workbench, and from here, we already added the TC300 to the database, so we can do a discover. And I'm using a BACnet router. 1601 is the network number, so that's good. And once this comes up, we can do our match. And we match there. Say OK. Should come back successful, and update the status to show that it is OK. And then we can go ahead and do a download. But we are using, like I said, 413, and we're in the Honeywell BACnet Device Manager. So when we select that device, it knows it's a TC thermostat. So when we do select download firmware, it knows what to do with it from there. So We should be able to get this to come back. There we go. It's back. So let's do a refresh. Thermostat's talking. So select the thermostat. We can go down to our list of commands. We want to do download firmware. So we'll say execute. The file chooser dialog box comes up. I've got a bookmark already for where my firmware is for my TC thermostats. Otherwise, you can go hunt and peck to find where it is. I always suggest saving it somewhere that's easy to get to when you're trying to do the firmware update. So TC thermostats, I'll go to firmware, current TC300, 1100 is what we want. We go in there, and you get to choose between the Yabe or the BACnet Wizard version of the firmware. Since we're using the BACnet Wizard, obviously we would choose that. Choose the file, and we would say open, and it would go off and do the firmware download. And as I mentioned, it will take a good 60 minutes. And in my case, I had to take 61 minutes for one, 62 for another. So 60 minutes is a really good approximate of what the how long it's going to take you. So move on to something else. Go get a cup of coffee. Come back, everything will be done. Then you'll have full functionality in the thermostat to be able to choose conventional or heat pump or whatever else you want to do with that thermostat. And then from there, since it's BACnet MSTP, we could always go to our points folder, and then you could, do a discover, and it will go out, and there are 354 objects in this thermostat. So there's configuration points in there. There's a lot of point statuses. There's set points. Everything's available to work from within BACnet MSTP to configure it, to configure how your LED ring works, configure alarms. All those different things can be done through here. So you have that full ability here. Modbus, you also have all the points available. I mentioned we have the documents available. And on that slide deck, I do have the last page with the links to all those documents to be able to help you with that. But in any case, here are the points that are available, and you obviously drop them in, work with them, you make your graphics up, whatever you want. On the TC300, because it comes from the Thermostat Wizard, if I double click on that, it will come up with a configuration wizard. Currently, it's still set for the original firmware. It doesn't have the updated equipment types to select from here, so I would imagine a future version will come out that'll support that part of it. But just wanted to show that this is here. But that is the TC300 and how to do the firmware update to get the extra functionality out of it. Any questions, comments, please let us know. And then I'll see you next time, and thank you for your time.